This is Bob Palmer, and you're listening to ZoneTalk by Sport Excel, where the magic of the zone is a game changer. In every episode, we dive into the lives of high performers and learn their amazing strategies so that you can take leadership of your game, your team, and your life.
My name is Caron Palmer, and today we are here with Bob Palmer, who is the CEO, founder, and high performance trainer for Sport Excel. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about Bob's latest project, which is going to be imminently launched. And this is about a brand new book for teen athletes in the clay target sports. So welcome to the podcast, Bob.
Oh, thank you, Caron.
Maybe before we start, perhaps you could give us a little bit of a background into where you started with this business and how that led to you creating this book for teen athletes.
Well, I've been working with athletes for around 30 years now, maybe a little bit more than that. And I've had a fair bit of success with athletes, fair meaning Olympic successes, even down to high school successes, college successes. So I've written the book for adults. I've written the book for the main book called Mind versus Target, but there's always a gap. And I've worked with so many young teens that just needed a system with which to apply to their game, the books weren't out there. It was only me teaching this program to them. So I thought it was time that I put together this book that just is a pathway to young athletes so that they can achieve the kinds of successes they want to achieve.
So is there anything else out there like this in the industry for clay target teen athletes?
There are books out there, such as books on mental toughness and that kind of thing, but they're usually topical. They give, topics about how to maybe be tough in the face of adversity and that kind of thing. And there's really no book out there that really gives you a pathway that tells you, well, what is tough? I mean, tough can be dangerous if tough is working through an injury, and you should actually be going to a doctor about it. So this is about being smart and being high performance smart.
Well, that's very interesting. And in this case, you have written this book as a part of a series. So your first book, Mind versus Target, was written for clay target athletes as well. You've also written a generic book. So this is just a logical sequence in this whole process.
It is, and although it follows the same formula, so to speak, this one makes the concepts a little more available to a teen audience. The different exercises that I teach are taught in a manner where they have catchy names and they make sense to a teen's life. But the overall concept is kind of interesting that I've taken the metaphor of a cell phone that teens know very, very well and utilize that as kind of the metaphor for how easy, and I mean easy it is, to start achieving a high performance.
And also in this book, you actually vetted the book with teens, parents, and coaches. And why did you do that? Before it got to the point of being finalized.
Well, I mean, athletes work with me, and they after a while they forget that I'm an old guy, right? I'm not a teenager anymore, and so I don't necessarily think like a teenager all the time. So it was useful for me to ask teens what they thought about the concepts, about this idea of high performance being, somewhat like a cell phone in terms of how it has an operating system and it has the different apps. And I mean, there was, just to be fair, there's one chapter that the teens that I wrote for in this group kind of panned, and so it allowed me to change it totally up and rewrite that chapter so that it was more fitting with what was in their experience.
And what did parents think about the ones that vetted the book prior to it being finalized?
Well, they loved it. They loved the idea that now, thankfully, there was a book that gave their kids a pathway, gave their kids some ideas on how to deal with some of the adversity that they face. I mean, there's all manner of things kids face when they're competing. they're dealing with just meltdowns. I mean, the embarrassment, the anger, and blowing up at their parents. I mean, parents didn't do anything wrong. They're the ones that are the financiers and the drivers and the cooks and all that kind of thing. They're part of the athlete's team. So I do have a part in the book that allows teams to kind of step back and say, hey, wait a minute, it might be advisable for me to, bring in everybody on my team and see them quite differently.
Including their coaches.
Including their coaches.
Because it's a team effort.
It is a team effort, and the neat thing about it is that, and I'm to blame with this as well. When I was young, I would go into a classroom with a teacher or go into a situation with a coach, and if the coach wasn't totally motivated or, was having a bad day, I'd have a bad day. If the coach was really in the zone, and I'd be really in the zone. Well, if you're going to be a high performer, you've got to have some tools with which to change that up and realize that, oh, maybe I can get my coach out of his sniff or her sniff.
So speaking of tools and strategies, maybe you could just give a bit of an outline of what parents, teens, and coaches can expect when they actually read this book.
Well, when you think of the program as a system with an operating system, well, first off, young athletes learn how to make their upcoming competition bold and bright, like an incredible internal selfie, if you will, so that they go to competitions excited, and the nerves of the past are a thing of the past. There's this notion that you will be nervous and that you might as well get used to it, and that's nuts. I think in terms of professionals and a brain surgeon, well, I mean, they're not going into an operation nervous. So why should any of us go into a competition nervous? It's nuts. So I teach athletes how to create that perfect vision of what they want, and then they go into the competition, and it's amazing. They just, wow, they can't wait to get there.
So what kind of issues will this book fix for teen athletes? And when I say teen, the demographic really is from about 13 upwards.
Yeah, even to the mid-20s. I mean,
right. And even parents and coaches, because it's a good read.
It's a good read for parents.
And it's valuable for everybody to be on that same page.
Exactly. The parents and coaches will get some insights into how their kids think and some strategies to actually help them. They'll be able to follow along with the book quite nicely.
Yeah.
Well, I talked briefly about a meltdown and anger. Well, there are strategies by which where you can deal with that past event and forget it. I mean, the greatest of athletes have a very short-term memory for the mistakes they make. They have a strategy that allows them to forget it and move on. So if they mess up in a major game, the next game they're likely the ones that are going to be, hitting the home run or scoring the overtime goal, whatever the sport is. And so I teach athletes how to do that. A strategy for forgetting. The other thing athletes sometimes struggle with is learning new skills. They're frustrated with part of their game. Well, there's a strategy in the program, in the book, on how to step into the shoes of some of your mentors and role models and learn just like that.
And there's other strategies, I understand, for stopping intimidation. So maybe talk a little bit about that.
I mean, one of the biggest things that teens will face is peer pressure. And whether that's in the game or outside of the game socially. And there's a really powerful strategy within the program, within the book, that allows teens to kind of step back and go, okay, this is what's happening. It's up to me to change that. And if it's so severe that I can't on my own change it, well, then I might want to incorporate my coach or my parents or maybe law enforcement if it goes that extreme. But generally, when you're dealing with the issues of just being self-conscious, that's not very useful for most sports. And how do I recover from that? How do I see myself as the only one out there with the target? And in a sense, disappear my opponents.
And I was just going to talk about that one because distractions are pretty big when it's in the competition time frame?
Distractions are everything.
And it could be people, target, it could be weather.
I mean, people go to, my athletes go to competitions, and before it even starts, when they're doing the practice round, quite often, they'll have a meltdown. And for me, that's really interesting and really good, because the next one we get together and we fix those kinds of things, fill those chinks in their armor, so to speak. And it's really kind of neat when they do that, because they go to the next competition and say, hey, that doesn't bother me anymore. That was really cool. And that vision that they created works for the practice round, and it sets them up to compete in the regular rounds, or whatever the sport is. But they learn from that. And I had an interesting comment from one of my adult athletes. He was coming home from a competition, and he sent me a quick email saying, hey Bob, it's so much more pleasant coming home from competitions now. And of course I'm thinking, oh, he must have done really, really well. And it turns out he didn't. But what he was talking about was the tools that he had learned allowed him to resolve those things on the way home, so they would never happen again.
So basically, your whole philosophy is that competition is a very good training ground to get better.
Yes.
And your book taps into that, where when they have meltdowns or when they make mistakes or have frustrations, that is simply, what do you call GPS? So maybe you can elaborate on that a bit more, and how that ties into getting up better and better in all aspects of your game.
Well, I see three different skills for athletes. They have their technical skills that their coach teaches, and I don't get involved in that. And then they have what I might refer to as the mental skills, where they do high performance and they visualize and they have all these really neat strategies they start to embed.
Mm-hmm.
But there's another skill that sometimes we forget about, and I spent a little bit of time in the book on this, is this game skill. And the only way you get better at a game skill is to go play your game.
And put yourself on that line.
Put yourself on the line and fail more often than not when you first start.
Yeah.
And that's where the parents reading the book will see that, that has to happen. Here's what I can do to help my child through that. And one of the things is that kids can't tell the difference between someone who is disappointed for them, i.e., oh, my poor child, I don't like them going through this pain, I wish they wouldn't be suffering, or compare that to, oh, my child did not listen to the coach, my child didn't listen to me, I'm angry. The physiology of both of those responses is the same.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're commiserating with your child, they're not, they're kind of wondering what's going on with mom or dad, and they go into a downward spiral. The parent goes into a downward spiral. So the book in many ways, and this is about the teen, helping them pull out of that and understand they have to sometimes pull their parents out of it as well. But by parents reading the book, they will see that is something that they really need to do.
And even for myself as an adult athlete in karate, competition was quite stressful for me, and I did not have these strategies in those days. And I could have really used that, because I beat myself up a lot when I did not perform the way I wanted to. And I just think that this is so important, because I should have been able to just go, okay, what did I learn from that? How do I take that and next time change it up or get better?
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because that's where I learned how to build this program in the martial arts. Mm-hmm. And I remember distinctly in front of, getting ready to do one of my kata forms in front of judges and going, what's a grown man doing up here, making a fool of himself in front of other adults? And when I said that to myself, I said, I gotta fix that, or things are not going to go well in the future.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
And so this program is the result of that. Result of 30 or so years working in the clay target sports, where a number of athletes have reached the Olympics and done very well there. And I can't keep track of all the World Cups and high school championships and national championships that my athletes have won. And it's very rewarding, because it's almost a done deal.
And I think this book really is speaking to the next generation of teen clays athletes, and even athletes that are not in the clay target sports, even though the terminology may be, towards target sports, you can still apply the strategies until we get the next book out.
Yes, yes. I mean, reading this book, you just have to, whenever I say plays, you could apply your basketball or football or whatever
Hockey,
sport,
whatever.
hockey, whatever the sport is.
Exactly.
The strategies are still the same.
Yes.
And I work with multiple sports across the board, I'm not the expert in the sport, but I'm the expert in how do you put the system together, this formula together that allows you to have more fun. I mean, that's what sport's all about.
It is, and it's seamless because what you teach the athletes, you work hand in hand with coaches and with parents as part of your team when you are coaching your athletes. And this book kind of distills all of that into just a little handbook that they can take with them on the range and everywhere. And the one thing that I really liked, and I know some of the parents that reviewed the book prior to us finalizing it, they like how high performance cannot be contained to just sport. This book speaks a lot to, if you do well in education, and you've said this many times, when your athletes do well in school, that's a good indication of how well they're doing in sport and vice versa. And this extends to all areas of life. And maybe you can just expand on that just for a moment, because I think this is really critical.
I'm often kind of blown away by how these tools work in sport. I mean, I accept that as normal now. But I'll often get an athlete who's struggling with his GPA, his marks, or his scholarship is kind of on the line. And we apply the tools to a subject like chemistry or biology or wherever they're struggling, and get them in the zone regarding that subject just as we would in their sport. All of a sudden, it seems easier. They're more motivated, they go to class, and the teacher identifies them as being more motivated and helps them more than they would have in the past. And I mean, I have a young athlete who was struggling in a subject and now is doing that subject at college in an advanced course. The zone works like that.
And it sets the foundation for future if they want to get a scholarship. Getting that in place earlier on in their athletic and schooling career, so to speak, can only help them as they transition to school or transition into the workforce.
Absolutely. And right now I'm working with a young engineering student. He's about to graduate, and he has some projects that he's doing. And part of being a presenter when you're in your sport, you got to block everyone out. Well, part of being a presenter in school is you've got to engage the people you're presenting to, and this is part of the plan. This is setting him up to go into job interviews, where rather than being meek and mild, he's in the zone and takes leadership, and it's quite amazing how the athletes I've worked with who are going out for job interviews with respect to school are much more successful.
Yeah.
Because they engage the panel that's interviewing them, and it's, they again have more fun doing it that way.
And I think fun is so critical, because why else would you do the sport? You want to have fun, you want the enjoyment, you want to learn, you want to make friends when you're out on the range in competitions. The other thing that a lot of books don't talk about is the W word and the win word. And sometimes it's really hard for an athlete to say, I want to win. And maybe you could speak to that. Like, why is that so difficult? And how does that fit in with this book?
I think the reason the W word, the win word, is so difficult is that a lot of the people who have written about it in the past have struggled with it. And it's kind of like, I struggle with it, so everyone must struggle with it, which is kind of a nonsense way of looking at research. I mean, I ask any kid, and they may hesitate because they've been told, oh, don't think about winning, just think about skills and process and all that kind of stuff. But, I really drill down into what they're thinking. Of course they want to win. They're just afraid to say it because they've been told if they say it, it's not going to happen. It's going to get worse. But the key in terms of learning how to win is to have the strategies in place where you go and that notion you're going to win is embedded. You're not even thinking about it anymore. So you're not thinking about winning, which is what they want you to not do. But you know you're going to do really, really well and likely win. But I would never teach this to anyone without having that backup. They also know that, and well, I'm working with them. They have me to help them through any problems they have if they struggle. But they start to get excited, like this gentleman who was driving home. Aha! Now I know what to do about that, and that's exciting. And then it becomes much more, a kind of a scientific experiment where, well, let's apply this. Yeah, that worked, or didn't work. What do I do next? And they get very creative, and part of the book kind of is pointed at that kind of innovation you need to have as a young athlete. You have to be creative. You have to keep trying stuff. You have to be an innovator that goes beyond what the typical athlete does.
And it is the flip side. Winning, not everybody can win. There are only a certain number of spots on a podium. However, with strategies that you're teaching in this book, they can learn, and every time they can learn a little bit more and apply it to different parts of their life. So winning can be beyond sport. It can be whatever that means to them.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have one dad who I work with, and I work with his son, but I also get to work with the dad coach. And I mean, he is really excited to be working with his son in the clay targets, because he knows all about high performance, and he was a top wrestler. I think he came number 2 in the nation, in the U.S., and he, realizes there are a few strategies that he could have used that, if he had had my program at that time. And now he's applying them to his training of his son, and his son's a national champion. So it's
the book you always wish you'd had as a teen athlete. You've said that many times, and many of us have not had that, and it's what we could have all used.
If there was a bit of selfishness in this book, it was because I wrote that book for Bob back when he was 13, 14 years old.
And just didn't know where to go.
Had no idea, no clue. I probably knew all I needed to know about high performance at that time. I just didn't know how to apply it, because I'd already experienced the zone. I'd already experienced being able to forget the play that just happened. I'd experienced blocking out spectators. I experienced, dealing with difficult coaches and stuff like that, although I had some amazing coaches. But it's only with the martial arts that I was able to start piecing it together and get excited, and I still had to deal with stuff.
Yeah.
But it became a lot more fun and empowering.
So to close off this podcast half hour, what would you say to parents and coaches? Because basically they're the ones that are looking at giving their young athletes the advantages that they're able to. And what would you say?
Well, first of all, take a look at Team versus Target. I'll put a plug in again for the book. But start thinking about high performance as a system.
Yeah.
Rather than just throwing stuff and thinking that high performance will come after the skills are learned. No. High performance comes right alongside learning the skills, and the skills come faster, as does the excitement of the young athlete, and they become a student of the game, a lifelong player of the game, because it's way more fun, and they stick with it, and they may surprise you and start showing an interest where there's scholarship material, or they just want to go out and compete with the old man or the mom or whatever, right? It can be quite a family high performance situation.
That's wonderful. So Team versus Target is available on Amazon and other fine online book retailers, and it will be launching December 1. And look for that, and if you have any questions, feel free to contact us at the email or the website below this at the end of this podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you, Bob, for writing this book for the next generation of team trainers.
This episode of Zone Talk by Sport Excel has ended. But be sure to subscribe and be sure to rate and review us so that we can continue to bring you the best zone and high performance content. See you on the next episode.